7:30 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Old Bridge Township Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting, September 3, 2020. I'm James Sullivan. As chairman of the board, I'd ask all now to please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under
God,
indivisible,
liberty, and justice for all.
Thank you all. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Old Bridge Township Zoning Board of Adjustment has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act at least 48 hours prior to the commencement of this meeting by prominently posting in the municipal complex an announcement giving the time, the date, the location, the agenda of this meeting. Also by mailing such announcement to the Home News and Tribune. Also by filing a copy of such announcement with the municipal clerk. And finally, by posting this announcement and agenda on the township website. Good evening to all. It's nice to see all your faces. Before I ask for a roll call, I welcome all the board members, Mr. Sachs, Silverman, I see Debbie Masterson, and all the professionals. It's nice to see you all here the last weekend before the unofficial end of the summer, and I don't know where it went. Hopefully the next time, or hopefully by October, I would prefer that we could get back to doing these in the confines of the courtroom. But I guess that will be up to people in higher pay grade than me. Ms. Silverman, can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Mr. Dewhurst?
Here.
Mr. Connor?
Here.
Ms. Kilduff?
Here.
Mr. Scogno?
Here.
Mr. Sikowski?
Here.
Mr. Stoner?
Here.
Chairman Sullivan?
Here.
Mr. Sachs?
Here.
Ms. Sawant?
Here.
Mr. Garrity? Tom?
Here. Yep, here.
Mr. Dajay?
Present.
Ms. Drum?
Here.
And myself, Kim Silverman.
Thank you, Ms. Silverman. This meeting is being conducted electronically via the internet by a webinar. It's unique, and as we know, it takes patience on all involved, as obviously we are no longer gathered together. We're doing so from our own homes and offices. This meeting is also televised on OBTV 15, as well as live on YouTube. I remind those watching on TV that there is up to a 30-second sound delay in communication. This will be important to remember if you wish to personally join our public portion. Anyone calling in is advised to lower your listening device, whether it be TV or your computer, or otherwise you'll be confused by the time delay. I ask all participants, at least here on the Zoom at present, to silence their cell phones to avoid any disturbances in testimony. The meeting will follow the same protocols as always with the zoning board. There are some general housekeeping matters this evening that will be that we need to take care of. They'll be followed by two applications this evening. In between, if necessary, I'll check with the stenographer, and we may very well take a 5-minute recess, not only for the benefit of the stenographer, but for the professionals and board members. As in all applications, there's a public portion that follows the testimony. If you have particular interest in any application this evening and you wish to ask questions via telephone, I suggest that you take notes during the presentation to refresh your memory. Now's a perfect time to get your paper and your pen or pencil. The reason for doing so is the procedure of the board is both of these applications that you'll hear this evening are represented by attorneys at law. They will present the case introducing various witnesses of different backgrounds, all to put items of evidence on the record. We will listen to all of them. In between them, the board members, as well as the board attorney or the township professionals may have individual questions for them. After all of the witnesses for each application are heard, it would be then that a public portion would take place. That's why I advise you to write some notes down while you're listening to it if you're interested, because it may be another hour before you actually get to the public portion. Let's see. I think I got everything. Board members, please, all board members will be voting this evening. There's only 7 sitting board members this evening. All will vote. Please, if you identify yourself for the stenographer by your name before you speak, because she obviously she can't see who's speaking, as it were, when we were in the courtroom. Short of that, our meeting is administrated and choreographed, if you will, by Miss Venus Sawant, who is the township's professional planner. I'm sure I missed something, so for an advisory, Ms. Sawant, would you please fill in? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman Sullivan. Good evening, all. Just a few reminders for all board members. Please mute yourselves when the presentations begin. During the meeting, only the chairman, the board attorney, the board secretary, and the court reporter will be unmuted. Everyone else will be muted. For applicants, professionals, you will be asked to turn on your video and you will be unmuted when it is your turn to testify. So please be patient. With residents who have questions or want to offer comments, you will be permitted to speak once the chairman opens the meeting to the public. Please be patient. Everyone will get a chance to speak. When it's your turn to speak, I will announce the last 4 digits of your phone number or your last name, and you will be unmuted. I will also announce the last 4 digits of the next caller's number so that that person is ready to speak. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sawant. Item number 2 on the agenda is minutes, but I didn't receive any. Kim, was that?
No,
was
there's
that
no
your comment?
minutes.
There was none for this one, right?
No.
Okay, we'll move to item 3 on the agenda, and that's completeness waivers. We have 2 this evening. We'll start with the first one, 46-2020Z, Old Gateway Shopping Center. Jennifer Phillips Smith representing. And I just have to see if I can pull this up. Okay. Give me a second.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
I can't see, but I am assuming that's Ms. Smith.
It is, yes.
Okay. All right. Pulling up the memo from Ms. Sawant.
Sure.
And I'll read it into the record. All right, board members, you've all received the memo dated September 1, 2020 from Venus Sawant. Reference to this matter listed as Heritage Oldbridge LLC, Block 5000, Lot 3, application 46-2020Z. For a major preliminary and final site plan with a D4 and a C variant. The subject property, also known as Block 5000, Lot 3, is located at the intersection of Ernst Road and State Highway 9. The subject property consists of a single lot totaling approximately 22.82 acres per township tax records and is fully located within the CR zone. The property is surrounded by several commercial properties and park and ride facilities. Currently, the site contains a retail commercial center. The applicant proposes to demolish a portion of the existing commercial building and construct a new 39,112 square foot grocery store. The application requires a D4 variance and bulk variances. Our office has reviewed the waiver request by the applicant for the following. Item 3A, environmental impact statement. Item 3B, community impact statement. Item 3D, aquifer recharge assessment. Items 21 and 37A, the provided survey uses NAVD 88 instead of NGVD. And finally, item 52, tree removal permit. The applicant is not proposing significant changes to the site. The applicant proposes to demolish a portion of the existing commercial building containing 32,657 square foot store and construct a 39,112 square foot grocery store in its place. Additionally, the applicant proposes to restripe a portion of the existing parking lot and realign the existing circulation drive aisle in front of the building. No new streets or landscaping is proposed. We therefore recommend that the board waive the above items. The applicant should be advised that the waiving of any completeness items does not constitute approval of any portion of the application, and that any information found necessary during the review process must be supplied. Authored by Vita Swan. Ms. Phillips, I'll give you the floor.
Thank you. This is Jennifer Phillips Smith from Gibbons PC for the record. And I am here tonight on behalf of Heritage Old Bridge LLC, which is actually now known as Brixmore Old Bridge LLC. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with the Gateway Shopping Center on Route 9. They've driven past it many times. You've probably shopped there. The Modell's, as you probably know, is going out of business. So the applicant is proposing to demolish that portion of the shopping center and to rebuild it in a slightly larger configuration to attract a new anchor tenant. Everything is as Mr. Sullivan summarized it. So we are asking for the 6 waivers identified in the memo, mostly because the site is fully developed and there's really not a need for an environmental impact assessment on a fully developed shopping center. And similarly with the survey data, we've submitted the surveys. We're just asking for the accommodation to have it in NAVD 88. So that largely summarizes it, unless anyone has any questions. We do have Scott Quigley from Langen here, who's available to answer questions should you have any.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Ms. Sawant? You're muted. Okay, there we go.
Yes, board members, I really don't have anything to add. Like Ms. Smith mentioned, this is going to be slight, the building footprint is going to change only by a very less amount, I think somewhere roughly 6,500 square feet. So the original building is, I believe, 32,657 square feet, and the proposed building will be 39,000 square feet. There are no major changes to the site except for restriping and realigning of the front portion of the existing stores area, but otherwise there will be no other changes. So I recommend that the board grant these waivers.
Thank you, Ms. Sawant. Ms. Smith, I'm just going to ask the board if anybody has any problems with it or any questions, and then we'll take a vote. Board members, by raising your hand in front of you, I can see all of you. Does anybody have any problem with the way it is, this waiver has been written? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to ask someone to move in favor of granting the waiver.
Motion to approve, Connor.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I think it was filled up, but that's okay. Either way,
Whoever.
however it's recorded. Roll call, please, Ms. Silver.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Kildorf,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Ms. Smith, thank you very much. Enjoy your last holiday weekend of the summer.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Good night. Let me pull up the next one. Mr. Dewhurst, do you happen to have a copy of it, or can you pull it up? I just did something here that I probably shouldn't have done, so.
Which you look for the next. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to read it. It's 44-2020 Z2V Manzo LLC.
That is.
Do you have it, sir?
I do.
Sal?
How about Mr. Sachs? Would you read it into the record?
I
If you
can
have
read it if you like.
Okay, Mr. Dewhurst, if you have it, please read it into the record.
Okay, subject 2G Manzo LLC, Block 2001, lots 13.24, application number 44-2020Z, amended preliminary and final site plan with the D variance. Block 2001, lots 12.24 is located on Cheesequake Road. The site can be accessed via Old Waterworks Road and is surrounded by several industrial facilities. The site consists of one lot totaling approximately 9.46 acres or 412,000 square feet per township tax records and is located in the SD-3, Special District 3 zone. Currently, the site is vacant and full of natural vegetation. The applicant proposes a warehouse with ancillary office space totaling 142,100 square feet and associated parking and loading zones. The application requires a D and bulk variance. Our office has received a waiver request by the applicant for the following. Item number 8, key map provided at 1 inch is equal to 1,000 feet in lieu of 1 inch is equal to 800 feet. Item number 32, drawing size 30 by 42 in lieu of 24 by 36 due to need to provide larger scale and detail. We have no objections to waiving the key map and the drawing size. The applicant should be advised that the waiving of any completeness items does not constitute approval of any portion of the application and that any information found necessary during the review process must be supplied.
Thank you very much, Mr.
You're
Dewhurst.
welcome.
Mr. Alfieri, I know he was on there.
Yes, good. Can you hear me?
I can, Mr. Alfieri.
Yeah.
Go right ahead,
Thank-
sir.
Sorry. Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. Salvatore Alfieri on behalf of the applicant. Without wasting much of the board's time, the waiver requests are relatively minor. If the board requires these two items during the course of the hearing, we would of course provide them, and otherwise we'd request the waivers be granted.
And this would be in addition to the one from the last meeting, correct, sir? This is
That's
one more.
correct. Granted.
Okay.
at the last-
All right. Mr. Watt?
Good evening. So these two waivers, as the board is aware, we granted a few waivers last time. After those waivers were granted, when I was reviewing the application for completeness, we came across these two items that were missing. I am fairly comfortable in recommending the board grant these two waivers because the applicant has provided a key map. It's just that it is at a different scale. The drawings have been submitted to the township. However, they are a different size. So I recommend that the board grant these two waivers.
Thank you, Mr. Watt. Board members, by raising your hand in front of you, I can see you all. Does anybody have a comment or any question? All right, seeing none, I'm going to ask someone to move these for these waivers.
I'll move them. Dewhurst.
We got Dewhurst in favor of granting, and was there a second?
Kilduff, second.
And Kilduff, second. Roll call, please, Ms. Silverman.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Kilduff,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Alfieri.
Thank you. Good night.
Enjoy your holiday.
You too. You too.
Item 4 is the resolutions. We have one. It's 38-19Z Old Bridge Rifle and Pistol Club. Mr. Sachs.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Application 38-19Z, Old Bridge Rifle and Pistol Club, major preliminary and final site plan with D2, C variances and design waiver approval. Property located block 8005, lot 5 at 1 Jakes Brown Road. Public hearings were conducted on June 4th, 2020 and July 16th, 2020. The applicant is a tenant of this property, which is located in the R120 low density severe environmental constraints residential zone. The subject property is comprised of a single tract of land containing 121.94 acres of land located fully within the R120 zone. The shooting range currently utilizes approximately 5 acres of the overall site, and the remaining area consists of brush and wooded areas extending to the southern portions of the property. The site also contains a gravel parking lot and multiple trailers. Commercial industrial properties are located to the southeast side along Jake Brown Road. Property is only accessible via Jake Brown Road, which connects to County Road 516. The applicant was seeking to expand the existing club utilizing 3 additional acres. The proposal includes the following: relocation of shooting ranges to face north on the site, construction of a gravel parking lot containing 120 parking spaces, including 5 handicap parking spaces and additional landscaping, new pavement areas and stormwater management. Shooting range facility is not a permitted use in the R120 zone. This is a pre-existing non-conforming use and therefore required a D2 variance. There were a number of bulk variances required. There was just one bulk variance required for storage of outdoor storage, and a number of design waivers for minimum parking stall length, minimum parking stall width, landscaping within parking lot, tree required within parking area, types of trees within parking area, peripheral landscaping along sides of parking lot, no less than 20% of the gross area of any parking lot, no shade trees at 70 feet, bituminous or concrete parking area, and parking stall size, minimum double island parking lengths, and landscaped islands. There was testimony from several witnesses, including Mr. Kevin Ball, who testified on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Jay Patel, professional engineer, Ms. Allison Coffin, professional planner. There was one individual who testified in opposition, Nina Joknowitz. Richard Pucciarelli testified on behalf of the Old Bridge Historical Society. The applicant agreed to comply with all the recommendations of the Township engineer and planner. And the only additional conditions of approval would be that the applicant agree that no flammable hazardous materials will be stored in any trailers on site. The applicant agreed to add notes to the plans restricting the import of soil and certified clean fill as per township standards, and to delineate and note on the plans the location of the Brown Family Cemetery. And the applicant also agreed to provide a letter of interpretation from NJDEP upon receipt of same for the review and approval of the professional staff. So what you approved were a D2 variance, C variance and design waivers, and preliminary and final major site plan. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Board members, you've heard the resolution. Someone want to move it for memorialization?
Motion to approve, Connor.
Second, Scogno.
Moved in second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Geldof,
yes,
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
yes,
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. We have one other, what do we have here? An escrow deficiency resolution under item 5. It's 38-19Z. It's Old Bridge Rifle and Pistol Club. It was for $1,500. It has been paid. Someone want to move it, please?
I'll move it. Dewhurst.
Is there a second?
Scogno, second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Geldof,
yes,
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
yes,
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. We move to item 6 is continuances. There are 2 on the agenda. 36-19Z. It's Jersey 34 Associates. It's in the R20 zone located at 593 New Jersey State Highway 34. Looking to construct a second building with basketball courts, locker, and bathrooms. This for a preliminary and final major site plan with C&D variances. The applicant in this matter, being represented by the Holland Paper Firm, is asking the matter to be continued to December 3rd with further notice. If you're watching at home and you have any interest in this matter, not going to be heard this evening. It will be on the agenda December 3, 2020. There will be further notice. The second one is item 4-2020Z. That's 69 Ravine Avenue LLC. It's in the R5 zone. Its location is 69 Ravine Avenue, and it's an addition to a single-family home requiring a C&D variances. Applicant being represented by Bill Bajor. In this case, The applicant is asking the matter to be continued also to December 3rd with further notice. Once again, if this is a matter you were interested in this evening, it's not going to be heard, it will be on the agenda. December 3, 2020 with further notice. That brings us to our two applications of the evening. We'll proceed in order. And I'll call the first one in. The number is 7-2020Z. It's L. Pacheco, the LCP Group, block 21,000, lot 20.14. The location is 1184 Marlborough Road for a new single-family home. It's an R120 zone. C&D variance is required. George Pressler, Esquire, representing the applicant. Sir? Mr. Pressler, you have to unmute. Thank you, and it's your show.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
George, did we lose you?
Mr. Highland is having a difficult time.
George? Where'd he go?
Did we lose him?
I don't see.
I see Mr. Pappy is here somewhere, and is also Mr. Highland here?
I don't think Mr. Highland's here, Mr. Chairman. I think Mr. Pacheco is here, though. I saw his name.
Mr. Highland is here as an attendee.
Oh, okay, okay.
I do see him as an
Have to get him over.
Can you bring him as a participant, Fina?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. All right, and
We're gonna need Mr. to get
George
Mr.
Pressler is on there as a participant also. And on that same.
as an attendee.
I believe
Yeah.
he shared his invite with someone. Panelist, I just want to wait to see if he logs in. Maybe he shared his invite with someone.
All right, for those watching at home, we're just having a little technical difficulty. As I said, these presentations are unique, and we're trying to do the best we can, and also these professionals are trying to do the best they can from their home offices.
Mr. Highland is here, has
Mr.
joined us.
Highland, we just have to wait to get Mr. Pressler back. Could either Mr. Pappy or Mr. Highland phone him?
I'm here. If you could hear me.
Okay, could you phone him, Mr.
Yes, we've been communicating. I think he didn't get a link, or he's saying he did not get a link. So I'm just wasn't sure if you'd be able to patch him through.
That would be up to Mr. Sawant. I don't know how that works.
I don't have a copy of everybody's link, but George was on there before, so.
I'm not sure what happened to George.
All right.
Mr. Sachs, could we just move with the next
Yeah,
one?
yeah. I mean, we can probably proceed forward, and if Mr. Pressler comes back on, then we'll certainly let him participate. Mr. Pappy,
I'm sharing my link with Mr. Pressler. Let's see if he can log in using that.
Okay.
Yeah, other than that, I agree with you, Mr. Sachs. I guess the witnesses could put on their presentation, right?
He's here.
Yeah, exactly.
There's George.
There's George. Okay.
Okay, he's back.
All right, good to see you back, Mr. Pressler. Your words.
Hold on, I think he's got to connect still.
Okay. We can see you, we just can't hear you yet.
George, can you hear us? George?
If Mr. Presser, can you hear us? You could wave your hand if you hear us.
That's not.
Okay. I guess he's trying to move the camera around. I'm pretty sure what he was going to do was put on Mr. Pappy first, I would think, Mr. Sachs, right?
Probably right, Mr. Pappy?
I would agree with that. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Why don't you proceed, and Mr. Pressler can ask you anything after you give your testimony.
Okay,
Let me swear, Mr. Pappy, let me swear you in first.
okay,
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name, professional affiliation for the record.
Okay, my name is Brent Pappy, spelled P-A-P-I. And I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, partner at East Point Engineering.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, I think I see Mr. Pressler back on now. So,
Okay,
George, unmute yourself.
in the upper right-hand corner or the bottom left somewhere, you'll see that little red thing there. Click on it. Looks- That's for the video. Click on the other one, the one that says, the one that is for the sound.
How's that?
George, can you hear us?
We can hear you.
Now we got you, George.
Okay, fantastic.
All right. George, we just swore in Brent, so I'm assuming if you want to maybe give a little opening statement, that's fine.
I will give a very short opening statement. I saw Mr. Pappy's proposed presentation, and I don't want to be repetitious, but for the record, my name is George Pressler. I am an attorney at law of the state of New Jersey, and I represent the applicant, Mr. Pacheco. Mr. Pacheco is the owner of property located at 1184 Marlborough Road. And this piece of property has been in his family for a number of years. What Mr. Pacheco proposes to do is to demolish the existing dwelling and construct a new two-story residential home for himself and his family to occupy. There are a couple of bulk variances, which we are seeking relief on it, which will be covered by hopefully Mr. Highland, who is our planner. If not, I'm sure that Mr. Pappy can help us get through that. So at this point, I already know Mr. Pappy's going to stay, so I would respectfully ask Mr. Chairman if we could have Mr. Pappy sworn, and he will give his testimony addressing engineering and if need be, the planning.
Mr. Sachs already put him under oath while you were trying to get back on, so he's all ready to go. He's put on his credentials that he is a licensed engineer in the state of New Jersey, and we're going to accept his expertise. So, Mr. Pappy, go right ahead.
Okay, thank you all very much. So I'll begin by just describing the property. The subject property, as Mr. Pressler just stated, is block 21,000, lot 20.14. It's located at 1184 Marlborough Road, and it contains 17,637 square feet, 0.405 acres. The lot's located within the R120 residential zoning district. It's currently developed with a one-story single-family dwelling with a gravel driveway and existing storage shed at the rear. The neighboring lots are also residential and similar in size. I'm sorry, the zoning district is the R120, the low-density, severe environmental constraints residential zone, just for clarification. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing dwelling to construct a new 2.5-story dwelling with a footprint area of 1,933 square feet. A paved horseshoe drive is proposed at the front of the property, as well as a deck patio and a spa at the rear. The existing storage shed is to remain. The natural grade of the lot slopes from the west to the northeast, where woods exist off-site. That's from Marlborough Road, which is at the front of the property, toward the rear. The proposed grading consists of grass swales at each side of the dwelling to direct the stormwater in the same pattern, in the same direction as it does now, again, to the northeast or toward the woods. And the new dwelling will be served by the existing utilities that are located at Marlborough Road for water, gas, and sewer. The applicant's requesting the following variances for approval. Joe Highland, who is our planner and architect, will provide testimony in support of each. We're requesting a D4 use variance since the proposed floor area ratio from the dwelling exceeds the R120 zone requirement, where .08 max is permitted and .16 is proposed. Minimum rear yard variance where 100 foot is required and 80.9 feet is proposed. And a minimum side yard accessory for the existing shed that's to remain where 20 feet is required the minimum side yard accessory for the rear deck where 20 foot is required and less than 20 foot is proposed to the north. We will comply with all the planning review comments and any engineering comments, and we'll obtain any outside agency permits. That's all I have.
Okay. Mr. Presley, you were going to ask anything else of Mr. Pappy at this point?
Not at this point, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Why don't we go? Is Nicole here? Via, why don't you?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Pappy, my memo had an image which was of a structure that is located to the rear yard. What
Yes.
exactly is that structure?
That's an existing storage shed.
Okay, so there would be, Larry, there would be a setback existing nonconformity related to this accessory building because it is close to the rear property line and the rear and the side yard line. Also, I had noticed, and I don't have that comment in my memo because I wanted more clarification before I bring that up, but there is some wetlands in close proximity to the rear side of the property. Did you get a chance to look at that? Because I had gone to GeoWeb and I noticed that it chips at the corner of the lot. I just wanted to ensure that the house is not built within the transition area, or, I mean, I know it's not within the wetland for sure, but I just wanted to ensure it's not within the transition area.
Excellent point. I could speak to that. We had a company, EnviroTactics, do a land use assessment. So they went to the property, they walked the property on and off site, and they had provided or prepared a report. I believe it was submitted with the application. I apologize if you didn't get it, but what the information that they had included in their narrative is shown on the plan. So in that wooded area, we're showing the approximate location of that wetland line that you just referenced, and a approximate 50-foot buffer from that wetland line per their field reconnaissance. And that line does not touch the property. It's at the rear northeast corner. It's just past it.
Perfect, perfect. Because if the transition area was to be a part of this property, I would have requested you to put posts so that the owner knows not to use that property, or it is a transition area for the wetlands. However, based on your testimony, if the transition area doesn't touch the property, I think we are good. Are you testifying as the planner too?
Joseph Highland is, he's on this call.
Oh, okay. So I think that's all for you.
Mr. Juan, what about there's a deviation in whether it's 0.16 or 0.17 on the FAR? That was noted in your commentary?
Yes, I did talk to Mr. Highland, and there were some discrepancies in the area calculations, which they have agreed to eliminate any discrepancies.
And Joe will speak to that. He'll clarify the GFA and the FAR.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
we're going to put in the exhibits.
I think they're part of the submission. I think, yeah. So I don't unless they've got anything additional other than the site plan and the elevations and floor plans.
Nothing else.
Okay, well, on sheet 1 of 2, it's Mr. Pappy's.
Right.
He has 0.17.
Yeah, that'll be corrected.
Okay.
I have a question though. Vina, you brought up the shed that apparently is here. Do we know what the setback requirement would be and what the distance is? And Mr. Pappy, if you can add to that, that would be helpful.
Yes. The requirement, and Vina and I had spoken about this. I did not have a specific or see in the ordinance a side and a rear yard requirement. I did see a shed size requirement. The shed size I saw was allowable as 150 square feet or 12 by 16. This shed is 192 square feet in size, which is not going to change. The side yard, existing side yard that will not change is 5.5 feet. And the rear yard is 6.6 feet, and that will not change.
Okay. So Vina, we just need the variance then for the accessory structure size. I don't know if you heard.
Yes, we do.
Okay, for the accessory structure size, okay.
And the deck, which is also the
Yeah.
accessory structure.
Right, that we know. Yeah, that we have already. Okay. All right, so we have an additional variance then for accessory structure size. Okay, which is a pre-existing nonconformity anyway. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna, Mr. Want, is Ms. Shapiro here? Is she testifying this evening? Or, I mean, I'm sorry, is she on the panel?
No, I am the only one who reviewed the application.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll go, in that case, I'm going to go and ask my board. Does anyone here, I'll go from left to right because I can't see you all at the present time. Mr. Scott, you have any questions? None. Ms. Kobeff? I cannot see you, so you're going to have to make a comment.
Sorry, no.
Okay, Mr.
Good.
Connor?
No comment.
Mr. Dewhurst? No? I can't see him either. Okay. Mr. Stoner?
No.
Okay. And Mr. Psychowski?
Nothing for me.
Go ahead, Mr. With your, Mr. Sachs, you already covered what you wanted, right?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Presser, we'll go with your next witness.
Mr. Highland, is he on now, Mr. Chairman?
He is, yes, sir.
Okay, great. We'll have him
Mr.
sworn,
Highland?
please.
Yeah, I'll have him. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Highland, please raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name, professional affiliation for the record.
Yes, my name is Joseph Hyland, Hyland. I am a licensed architect and a licensed planner. My address is 77 Milltown Road in East Brunswick, New Jersey.
Mr. Highland, you've testified before this board before, correct?
Yes, I have.
We'll accept his expertise.
Okay, I'll get started. I prepared the architectural drawings and will also provide the planning testimony. I'm going to repeat some of what Brent and George had to say, but the property is at 1184 Marlborough Road in the R120 residential zone. The lot is 17,637 square feet, and it has an existing single-family house in poor condition. A description of the new house. The existing house will be removed and replaced with a 2,824 square foot house located in front of the existing house. The owner and his family will live in the existing house until the new one is completed, and then the existing house will be demolished. The new house is a 2-story with a full basement. The first floor has an open floor plan for the foyer, living, dining, and kitchen areas. There is also a 2-car garage, a covered front porch, and a rear deck. The inside staircase goes down to the basement and up to the 2nd floor. This is in a 2-story volume that has a balcony to the 1st floor. On the 2nd floor, there are 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a laundry room, and a storage room. The walkout basement is unfinished, but the intent is to finish it in the future. The exterior of the house has both vinyl lap and vertical siding and manufactured stone. The roof is asphalt shingle and standing seam metal roof. In terms of the planning description of the project. In terms of the planning issues, the applicant is applying for C bulk variances and a D4 use variance. The D4 use variance is required as the floor area ratio exceeds what is permitted for the zone. An FAR of 0.08 is permitted, and this application is at 0.16. The lot is undersized for the zone. It is 17,637 square feet, where 120,000 square feet is required. A conforming house can be built up to 1,410 square feet. This is a hardship as the permitted house is small for new construction. The plan review report asks for testimony regarding the neighboring properties in their FAR. These properties appear to be in compliance as the houses are very small based on tax record information and a survey by Landmark Surveys that included site boundaries and the footprint of the adjacent property at 1178 Marlborough Road, which is lot number 2. This lot is 20,563 square feet and the house is 660 square feet. The next house east is lot 1, 1172 Marlborough Road, which is 27,322 square feet and has a 660 square foot house. These houses were built in 1940, according to the tax record, and are the size of a typical one-bedroom garden apartment, not the size of a new house. Contemporary new house.
Excuse me, I couldn't hear what you said.
The last sentence, these houses were built in 1940 and are the size of a typical one-bedroom garden apartment and not of a contemporary house. I did look up at local garden apartments in Old Bridge and did see them in the upper 600s to the low 700s in square footage. So these are very small houses. I would like to compare this application's FAR to the other residential zones in Old Bridge to demonstrate that the requested FAR is consistent with the zoning ordinance in other zones. Old Bridge Township has 11 residential zones. The applicant's zone is the largest for lot area. R120 requires a 120,000 square foot lot in area. The smallest is the R5 zone, a 5,000 square foot lot. In the R20, one can build a 9,600 square foot house, more than 3 times larger than what we are asking for. A 2,000 square foot house can be built in the R5 zone and be in compliance with the zone. This applicant's lot falls in area between the R15 zone, a 15,000 square foot zone, and the R20, a 20,000 square foot lot zone. The R15 permitted FAR is 0.19, so a 2,850 square foot house can be built in the R15. In the R20, the FAR is 0.17, permitting a 3,400 square foot house to be built on a 20,000 square foot lot. This application's lot size is midway between these two zones, and if the criteria from these zones is applied, the variance would not be required. I believe that if the zoning ordinance recognizes that a house of this size on a lot this size in a different zone is acceptable, then an argument can be made that it should be acceptable for this application as well. And this is all in response to item number 1 from the plan review report. Item 2, that there is a discrepancy in the floor area calculation. The correct number is 2,824 square feet. The first floor is 1,307 square feet, excluding the garage. The second floor is 1,517 square feet, including the storage area. The original number included the 2-story volume. That should not have been included, and this is why there's a discrepancy in the FAR. Number 3, the structure in the southwest corner is a shed. A variance is required. Number 4, the storage room on the second floor is so noted as the applicant has not decided as to how to use the space. The storage room is an extra room at this time. It may become a sitting room for the master bedroom, a study, a bedroom, or remain as a storage room. Item 5, the deck is in line with the side walls of the house. The property line is angled, so the deck is 18.9 feet off the north side of the house, adjacent to lot 2, and the deck is 20.15 feet on the south side. There is also a basement stair that is less than 20 feet to the south side lot line. The clearance below the deck is less than 6 feet high, so the stair needs to start in the side yard to maintain the head height clearance to gain access into the basement. Item number 6, the applicant is aware that he is responsible to secure all permits and approvals. And then an analysis of the D4 use variance, the positive criteria. Special reasons exist for the granting of the D4 variance. The site is particularly suited for the use, and the township will benefit by placing the building where it is proposed. This is an existing single-family residential lot, as are the adjacent properties. The master plan attempts to maintain the character of the area or zone, the single-family residence with a compliant front yard setback. The increase in FAR is caused by a new house with contemporary programmatic requirements, replacing an old house built for another time that is in poor condition. The new house will be constructed to the latest building code standards that went into effect earlier this year. The house will be safer in terms of fire protection, healthier in terms of interior environment, and be more energy efficient. This will be beneficial to the applicant's health and the general welfare of the applicant, his family, and future owners of the home. In terms of the negative criteria, there is a special reason that shows that the variance can be granted without causing substantial detriment to the public good and won't substantially impair the intent and purpose of the municipal zoning ordinance and the municipal master plan. And this is, as I mentioned earlier, the FAR ratio is consistent with the municipal zoning ordinance for lots of a similar size in other residential zones. In terms of the C use variances, there is a hardship regarding this property because it is an existing undersized lot of an unusual shape. The allowable building footprint is 1,933 square feet. The front property line is not parallel to the street. It is angled, but the house is parallel to the street. This leaves leftover buildable areas in the front and on the north side yard. The front property width is 124.68 feet. The rear 72.01 feet. So the north sideline angles in towards the rear, causing the deck to be over the sideline setback. The lot depth is 173.46 feet at a minimum, and the front and rear yard setbacks combined are 150 feet, leaving a limited building envelope. The rear yard setback is increased from 36 feet to 89.9 feet, so a better situation than the existing condition is provided. The deck side yard setback and the residence rear yard setback both require variances. There is an existing 200 square foot shed that will remain. It is within the required setbacks, but if made conforming, the shed will need to be in the middle of the backyard. As located, it is in the rear corner and gives some privacy from the neighbor's driveway along the side and rear property lines. The undersized lot and irregular lot shape present the hardship. The shed will require a variance for side and rear yard setbacks. The proposed development will advance the municipal land use law by providing sufficient parking and recreation for the applicant and his family. Negative, in my opinion, there is no substantial detriment to the general welfare and there is no substantial negative impact on the zone plan. One, in terms of the general welfare, the proposed use is consistent with the surrounding uses, the residential uses, and two, in regard to the impact on the zone plan, it is minimal. The existing lot is undersized and non-conforming, and the use does not change. In conclusion, based on my testimony, I believe there are special reasons to grant the variances. The general welfare is advanced due to the improvements to the property, and there is no substantial detriment to the zone plan or general welfare. That concludes my testimony.
Mr. Highland, Ms. Sawant.
I actually have no further questions. I just want to bring this up. I had a chance to quickly pull up the township's ordinance, and the shed, which is an accessory structure, requires 20 feet a side yard setback and a 25 feet a rear yard setback. So the existing shed is in violation of the side yard and the rear yard, and that are existing non-conformities.
So that would require variance, right?
Yes. So in fact, there are three existing non-conformities. One is the lot size and the side yard for the accessory structure and the rear yard for the accessory structure, in addition to three new variances.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Sawant. Board members, I'm going to go in order. I'm going to ask if you have any questions for Mr. Highland. Mr. Scogno.
One question, sir.
Go right ahead.
May I ask how the house is now heated?
I'm not sure. It's maybe the owner, Lou Pacheco, who's here, can answer that question.
We'd have to put him under oath if he wants to testify. You want him to testify, Mr. Scogno? Do you want to know what happened? What is it going to be?
No, I'm concerned if it's oil.
Oh, okay. Mr. Pappy, can you answer that if you know? Otherwise, we'll have to put Mr. Pacheco under oath.
I don't know if it's currently oil. I just know that there's a gas service, from what I understand, coming into the property now. So I believe it's probably gas, but I can't verify if there's any oil there.
Well, Mr. Pressler, this is your application, so is it okay if we put Mr. Pacheco under oath to find out?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Sachs?
Sure. Mr. Pacheco, why don't you unmute yourself and I'll swear you in. Please raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay, please state your name, spelling your last name and address for the record.
I can't hear.
A little louder, sir.
So C-A-C-H-E-C-O. Address 1184 Marlborough Road, Old Bridge.
Okay. And I think the question was, Mr. Scogno, you wanted to know what kind of heating service, what kind of heating he would have on the property, right?
That's correct.
What's there now?
What's there now?
Oil.
There's oil. Okay.
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 And also, are you hooked up to sewer and water?
No, I'm unable to hook up to sewer water currently. There is a service, yeah.
Can't hear. Can't hear.
I'm currently not hooked up. No.
Okay.
So it's septic now.
Yes.
Okay,
Septic
thank you.
and well, I guess.
Yeah.
City water. City water.
Big
Oh, he
concern.
has city water, but a septic. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, there's a notation on the plan for the existing septic system to be removed.
Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you, sir.
What are you going to do with the oil? Is it an above ground service or is it below ground? You going to keep it?
No.
Are you keeping? You're going to gas? Okay.
Yeah.
You're going to have to get, and you said it's below ground?
No, above.
It's above. Okay.
That makes it a lot easier. Okay.
Yep.
Well, we have Mr. Pacheco. Mr. Sachs, you have anything you want to ask him?
No, I have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
And any board member other than Mr. Scogno, raise your hand for this witness. All right, thank you, Mr. Pacheco, for answering that question. Now we go back to questions from Mr. Hyland, and I asked Mr. Scogno, and he had one. How about Ms. Gilduff?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Mr. Connor? Mr. Dewhurst?
No.
Okay. Mr. Sachs, we went through. Mr. Stone?
No.
Okay. And Mr. Psychowski?
No questions.
Okay. I have one for Mr. Hyland. You said it's the property doesn't line up with the road, so it's not a true 90-degree?
That's correct. The road actually bends in front of the property, so more or less, it's almost like an arc. I took a
Okay.
hook and then made the house parallel to that. And if you look on the engineer's plan, you will see that it angles up. The front yard setback is different from one end to the road than to the other.
Okay, interesting. Okay, is Mr. Pressler, you don't have any other witnesses, I'm assuming?
I do not, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Would you mind if I go to a public portion at this point?
Public portion is fine. Thank you.
Okay, for those watching at home, if you've been listening to this application and you have any questions, now is the time to call in. We're going to put up the sign again, which is the phone number. If you call that and follow the instructions, we will receive your call and Ms. Sawant will tell us and put you in order. Is there any at this point, Ms. Sawant?
No hands are raised.
Okay, we'll wait about a minute and a half just to allow someone to come call in. And if not, then we will close the public portion and we'll move forward. But this is the time to call in if you're interested in this matter.
I don't
No
see
raised
any
hands.
hands.
Ms. Sawant, none?
No raised hands.
Okay. In that case, I'm going to close the public portion on this matter. I'm going to go back to Mr. Pressler. You have any final comments, sir?
Nothing further. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Sachs, anything you want to add or advise the board? Oh, I know what, we're gonna have a D4
Yes.
variance before we do
Right, we
anything
have
else.
Yeah, we have the D4, I think 0.16 is what's being proposed, 0.08 is required. There's a rear yard setback, side yard setback for the deck. There's also 3 existing nonconformities for the shed, for accessory structure size, and for rear yard and side yard setback.
Okay.
That would be it.
Once again, these are difficult, so I'm going to go to the board. If anyone has a problem that they want answered before we go for a vote, I would appreciate if you would do it now. We don't have the same setting as in the courtroom, so I can't see you, and I don't. If something is troubling to anyone, please tell me now before we do go for a vote. No one has raised their hand. Mr. Sikowski, were you raising your hand or no? No? Okay. All right, well, seeing none then, Mr. Sachs, we could go forward with the vote, right? So the first one would be for a D4 floor area ratio, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Someone want to move it?
I'll move it, Sikowski.
Okay, is there a second?
Kilduff, second.
Okay, roll call on D4.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Kilduff,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Sikowski,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Mr. Sachs, can we take the bulks together, the Cs
Yes.
together?
Yes, we can.
Okay, as enumerated by Mr. Sachs, I will move them. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Dewhurst seconds, or was that Mr. Stoner? I didn't catch which one was it.
Yeah, it was Mr. Stoner.
Okay, Mr.
Stoner.
Stoner seconds. Roll call, please.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Kilduff,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Sikowski,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yeah, it looks to me like it's going to be a nice project there that's going to add a little luster to the street. I saw that there's a couple new homes next door to it, and I think this one will add something nice to that area. My vote is yes. Thank you, Mr. Pressler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Always a pleasure.
Okay, great to see you as well.
Thank
We'll
you,
have, I
everyone.
guess, a resolution next month, right, Mr. Sachs?
Yes, we would.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Highland,
Thank
and
you.
thank you, Mr. Pappy.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, have a great holiday weekend.
You too.
At this point, I think we're going to take a short recess. Ms. Masterson, I think would be in order, right?
Yes, please.
Okay, no problem. I have let's see, I have 8:32. How about 8:38? We can make it 6 minutes. 8:38, I'm asking everybody to come back on. Please silence mute yourself and turn your video off, please. 8:38, please. We stand in recess. Debbie, let me know when you're back.
I'm here.
I am back. Do I have Debbie? Debbie's there. Okay. Do I have on my board?
All the board is here. All right, I want to call the meeting back to order. Let's go once around the Zoom room on the roll call.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Here.
Mr. Connor,
Here.
Ms. Kilgoff,
Here.
Mr. Scogno,
Here.
Mr. Psychowski,
Here.
Mr. Stoner,
Here.
Chairman Sullivan,
Here.
Mr. Sachs,
Here.
Ms. Sawant,
Here.
Mr. Garrity,
Here.
Mr. Lavallo. I see Gary's name up there, but I don't, he's not unmuted. Mr. Dorje,
Present.
Ms. Drum,
Here.
and myself, Kim Silverman.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. We've reached the final application for this evening. It's number 6-2020Z. It's Fountains at Old Bridge LLC. 3 Old Mill Road and 90 Spring Hill Road. This is an R20 zone for 2 buildings, clubhouse, pool, gazebo. Preliminary site plan this evening. Steve Goen, Esquire, representing the applicant. Mr. Goen.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Yes, Steve Goen, Gouin, from Giordano, Halloran, and Ciesla on behalf of the applicant. So the board may remember the applicant received D1, D4, and D5 variance approval for this property by resolution dated February 21st, 2019. And now we are here as the second third, I suppose, a bifurcated application. We are seeking preliminary site plan approval tonight. And the preliminary site plan is based on the use variance plan that the board saw at that prior hearing and approve those variances. So in addition to preliminary site plan, we do need a few bulk variances that are associated with the preliminary site plan. Mr. Delaney is here to talk about those. I also have Mr. Kennel here who can talk about any traffic questions we have, although in terms of the review letters, there weren't a whole lot of traffic comments. So I don't intend to call Mr. Kennel necessarily, but if there are traffic questions, he is here. So the first thing I'd like to do is call Mr. Delaney, and we can start with the plan. Sean?
Yes.
Mr. Delaney, please raise your right hand. I'll swear you in. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, self you got.
I do.
All right, please state your name, spelling your last name, professional affiliation for the record.
Sure. Sean, S-E-A-N, Delaney, D-E-L-A-N-Y, with principal with Bowman Consulting. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. License is in good standing, have testified before this board. I'm also a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey since 2008. I don't know if I've testified before this board as a planner, but I have before several boards throughout the state on C and D variances.
Okay, Mr. Delaney, you were the engineer of record on this application, weren't you?
I was for the use variance, but not the planner at that time. I'm only here to testify for the C variances for the planning aspect.
Okay, so you're going to be testifying as a planner as well?
Yes.
Okay, so and you have had a planning license since when, sir?
Since 2008.
Okay, we'll accept your credentials, Mr. Goen.
Thank you very much.
Sean, why don't you, can we pull up the exhibit first? Sean, do you want to start with the aerial exhibit or just the rendered site plan exhibit?
I'll start with the aerial, just as a quick refresher for where the site is for everyone.
So I'm not sure who's running the exhibits. But we did.
Bina is running it.
So Ms. Sawan, if we could pull up the, it's labeled aerial map.
Vina, are you there?
I'm here. Just give me 1 second.
Oh, okay, you were muted. There's a huge storm outside, so if someone disappears, I will understand.
I've been seeing it in some windows behind some people.
There we are. All right, so Mr. Sachs, I think we'll mark this A1 if that works.
That works?
That's fine, yep.
Can you describe for the board what we're looking at here?
Sure, and this is an aerial exhibit that was actually prepared as part of the use variance application. We're reusing it again, entitled Fountains at Old Bridge Aerial Exhibit. It has a date of 7/16/2018, prepared by my office. The plan shows, the aerial map shows the site location in the center in white, and then it shows another dashed line around on the outside of, I believe that's 2,000 feet beyond the property. The site is located along Spring Hill Road and Old Mill Road with its intersection with Route 34, identified as block 10253, lot 9.11. The site is 6.46 acres, and as you can see, it's an irregular shaped property. Currently contains a 2-story frame dwelling, detached garage, and several sheds that are located along the Old Mill Road frontage on that portion of the property. The site is cleared in that area where the existing dwelling and buildings are located. The remainder of the site is undeveloped and wooded for the most part. At the, where's the direction here? At the southwest corner down by Spring Hill Road, there is a 100-foot JCP&L easement that cuts through the portion of the property. We'll see that more on some of the other exhibits as I testify a little further. So there are some restrictions because of that easement in that location. Specifically, site improvements are limited. You can have paved access points, and underground utilities are typically allowed, but no landscaping within the easement, no permanent structures are allowed either. The site has substantial topographic relief from the Old Mill Road portion down to Spring Hill Road of approximately 40 feet in elevation. The site is zone R20. As Mr. Goen pointed out, we did receive a D variances for a use D1, D4, FAR, and a D5 density variance previously for this site. Surrounding uses to the north along Old Mill Road is across the street is the Cheesequake Volunteer Fire Company and First Aid Squad, as well as the Cheesequake Elementary School. To the east, there are commercial lots, as well as a portion of a commercial lot, the Spine and Wellness Center, located in the R20 zone that is currently developed and wooded. To the west are 2 single-family dwellings and the child care center facility. They front on Spring Hill Road, and then to the south, once again, some more single-family residences in the R20 zone in this area. So that's all for this exhibit. We can go to the next one.
Yeah, so we're gonna flip over to our next exhibit, which is color site plan rendering. So Sean, we'll mark this A2, and then Sean, just describe for the board what we're looking at here.
Sure. This is a color rendering exhibit entitled Fountains at Old Bridge, dated 8/4/2020, prepared by my office. It is a colored rendering of the site and landscaping plans that were submitted as part of the application. So this plan depicts what is being proposed by the applicant on the site, which is 58 age-restricted residential units in 2 buildings, 29 units per building. It will consist of 19 one-bedroom units and 38 two-bedroom units, and will comply with code regulations as required. The building is just under 32 feet in height and 2 stories, which meets the ordinance requirements of less than 35 feet. There's also a 2,000 square foot clubhouse that is 1 story, approximately 27 feet in height. And there's also, and behind the clubhouse to the west is a small gazebo that'll be used for passive recreation on site. Proposed site, in regards to proposed site improvements, the site layout is substantially similar to that which was presented during the bifurcated application back in 2019. We have a single access drive off of Spring Hill Road, which has its connection at the same location as that plan. This is a private access driveway to the site. It's not a road, so therefore RSIS compliance is not required. The alignment shifted slightly to follow along the edge of the JCP&L right-of-way. That was due to the extensive relief in topography in order to get access up to the top of the hill. We are also proposing a right-of-way and pavement widening along the property frontage, which was also proposed as part of that bifurcated application. The on-site circulation, once you get to the top of the entrance driveway, is a 24-foot wide two-way circulation drive, really access to the proposed parking areas that are proposed on site. It is a north-south direction driveway with a hammerhead located at the northern end with some additional parking that which also provides for a turnaround on the subject property. To either end of the proposed buildings, the north and south of the buildings, there is a 20-foot wide fire lane that extends to the rear of the buildings. One of the previous plans that was presented during the bifurcated application showed that fire lane extending along the entire rear of the property. In discussions with the fire marshal, Mr. Garrity, during that process, one of his review letters had indicated that because the buildings were reduced down to 2 stories, that the fire lane at the rear of the buildings was no longer required. So we have removed that from the project. The extensions of those fire lanes right now still extend into the buffer, but instead of being 20 feet off the property lines during the previous hearings, we're now around 40 feet off those property lines to those fire lanes. There's also a 20-foot wide paved emergency access at the north end out to Old Mill Road. That is at the northern, just north of the clubhouse is a striped area in the parking lot. Just off that striped area, there's is where the location of this emergency access road is proposed. For circulation on site for pedestrians, we have a 5-foot sidewalk that we're proposing along Spring Hill Road. That sidewalk extends along the northern side of the access drive adjacent to the stormwater basin that is shown. At the top of the drive aisle, the sidewalk follows the curb line along there and then goes along the parking areas throughout the site. At the parking areas, it's 6 feet in width. The reason why it follows the curb as you come up the hill is due to the grades coming up that hill. It would not be ADA accessible if we pushed it closer to the retaining wall at this time. In addition, the sidewalks around the clubhouse and to the gazebo area are also 5 feet in width. We do provide 4 crosswalks across the drive aisle and parking areas through the site. They're proposed at islands. 2 of them are at the center of the apartment buildings, and one lines up with the clubhouse entrance as well. One is located between the 2 buildings at the center of the parking area to break it up. And then the final one across the north-south drive aisle is at the northern end of the parking lot for access out to the northern end and the walking paths in that area. We do have a recycling and trash enclosure located at the northern end of the site as well. So a vehicle can pull in head on, back out, make the K-turn through the hammerhead, and then return out through the driveway back down to Spring Hill Road. There was a comment from Mr. in the review letter from your professionals about looking at some potential options for adding another enclosure at the southern end of the site. We will certainly look at that and possibly see if we can add another one due to the 58 units on there might be needed. So we will definitely investigate that prior to coming back for final approval if the application is approved. As I mentioned, there's a potential grade change on the site. We are trying to to follow the existing grading patterns on the site for the design as well as the stormwater. The grades within the parking area and the drive aisles are 2 to 3%. Obviously, anywhere there's ADA accessible parking and sidewalks, they are designed at 2% or less to comply with those regulations. The rear of the buildings, we have 3-to-1 and 5-to-1 slopes and a grass swale. With a retaining wall, it's also located back along the northwest property corner and north of the second building in that area. There's also along the drive aisle into the site, there are retaining walls on both sides of that roadway because of the change in grade. And there's also a retaining wall that runs around the entire stormwater basin as well. That's due because, like I said, the grades down at the street are 40 feet higher. So we tried to balance the site up on top and lose the grade down through the driveway coming through, which caused some changes in the elevations and the need for the retaining walls. All the retaining walls will be proposed with fencing on top of them, 42 high post and rail. And then where the walls are adjacent to vehicular areas, we will also provide guide rail. Right now, we're proposing a wooden guide rail. It'll be provided in accordance with current standards for safety in those locations. Details and identifications on the plan will be provided. Utilities on the site will consist of an 8-inch water main that will run through the center of the site, feeding hydrants located throughout the site and connect to the existing water main stub located on the Old Mill Road. We have gotten some preliminary information from the MUA where those water mains are located, and applications are pending submission to them for review and approval for water. Likewise, there's an 8-inch gravity sewer main located on Old Mill Road to the west of the property. It's a terminal manhole. The application proposes to extend that line up into the site off of Old Mill Road, run it in a southerly direction. So the entire site will be fed by a gravity sanitary sewer system. Once again, information was provided by the MUA for the location of this. We have surveyed those locations as well. And once again, the application submission is pending to them. All other utilities, electric, gas, telephone, and cable are proposed to be run underground into the site and will either come from the existing facilities in Spring Hill Road or any facilities in Old Mill Road as well. Regarding stormwater management, we are proposing 2 stormwater basins on the site. The obvious one that is seen is the one adjacent to the entrance driveway to the site, just located to the north of it. Is a mixed infiltration / extended detention basin. There is also a second basin, which is a subsurface basin of solid pipes that are located behind the rear of the apartment buildings. The subsurface basin will capture and detain runoff from the buildings as well as the lawn areas adjacent to it, and release it at a slower rate down to the surface basin, surface infiltration extended detention basin. Surface basin down is an elevation of 64 with the top of the berm at 71.5 feet. It's designed to infiltrate the water quality storm, detain and release the larger storms at a slower rate. And it will connect into the existing pipe system that exists along Spring Hill Road that also discharges then in a westerly direction through an existing pipe that runs between the existing homes in that location. This is the same. The proposal here is what was presented as what was expected to occur when we did the bifurcated application as well. The on-site runoff will be collected by a series of inlets and pipes as well, and piped down to the basin. The site has been designed to comply with the stormwater management regulations and RSIS standards for quantity reductions, total suspended solids, water quality treatment, as well as the groundwater recharge for the property. With regards to landscaping, there's a 50-foot buffer required along the residential lots to the east, west, and south of the property. The buffers to the west, the single family, the care facility we have, there are some existing vegetation in those areas, and we have maintained the existing vegetation up to that 50-foot buffer line, not disturbed into it. We are supplementing the existing buffer and landscaping that's located adjacent to lot 9.16 immediately west of our site on Old Mill Road. In addition, the buffers to the south, where the JCP&L easement is, as well as the residents to the south of the site along Spring Hill Road. The buffer was disturbed due to the grading and the retaining wall being installed, but the existing vegetation was attempted to be maximized or kept to the maximum extent possible, which is why we installed the wall too, to try and limit the grading that would be necessary in those areas to disturb that existing vegetation. We are proposing some plantings at the top of the wall as well to provide some additional buffering, as our site will be slightly higher than the properties to the south. Along to the west, it is an undeveloped property at this time. It is an R20 zone for the lot. There is a small commercial use located along Route 34, but the remainder of the parcel remains undeveloped. We have maintained some existing vegetation. That is also where the underground detention system is going. We have provided some additional landscaping in that area to provide some screening in an attempt to try and maintain some kind of buffering to the property to that location. There's also a retaining wall located on north of the second building on the north side, adjacent to some commercial properties in that location. There was a comment from, I believe, in board planner's letter about looking to change out some of the vegetation that we are proposing to make them a little bit taller than the low-lying, I guess, shrubs that we are proposing location. Due to the retaining wall location, the proximity to the property line, we will look to see if we can put something more, some higher vegetation in those areas. But it should be noted that the wall there is about, I think, 6 to 8 feet high, and our site is below the adjacent property. So even with the shrubs up there at that height, you'll be looking into almost essentially a one-story building at that time from those adjacent commercial properties. So the impact should be negligible. As I mentioned, the buffer was a 20-foot buffer along that eastern property line. Due to the fire lane that was previously proposed, that has been removed. So the buffer, at least from the traveled roadways and the fire line, has been increased to about 40 feet. However, the subsurface basin and the retaining wall are located within that buffer, but it will be a lawn area back there with planting proposed. We do propose a mixture of deciduous and evergreen shrubs along the perimeter of the site and the parking areas and around the foundations of the two proposed buildings. We've maintained the open space around the clubhouse with walking paths supplemented with vegetation there to provide passive recreation as well in that location. Lighting on the site is proposed through 18-foot tall LED fixtures, shoebox styles. We have two types of throw patterns proposed, a more symmetrical pattern and a forward throw. The forward throw ones are proposed against the building to shoot the light away from the building out to the parking area and to limit the lighting that would impact the residents who are living on the ground floor. Spacing right now is about 100 to 125 feet staggered across the parking lot. The goal was to provide a uniform spread over those parking areas and the walkways on site. Understand from the review of the review letters that we have received that the ordinance suggests or recommends an approximately 4 times the height of the poles to be spaced on the site, which would be 72 feet. So we would need a waiver from that condition if the design is acceptable in terms of the light levels that we are proposing. There is one area located at the southern end of the site, just by the hammerhead, and where the fire lane is located, that the parking stalls are a little below the requirement, that we will propose to add an additional light to raise that level to meet ordinance requirements and eliminate one of the waivers that was identified in the planner's letter, which I'll go through shortly. We'll also agree to add some additional bollard lighting along the walking path to the gazebo, provide some lighting back in there for safety purposes and to illuminate that for after hours, nighttime walking as needed. With regards to the development signage, there was some comments in the review letters. At this point, we are not proposing one. If that changes, though, we will obviously, at time of final application, submit the required details and documents. And if there's any relief requested, we will request it at that time. There's also some comments regarding some of the two environmental areas on the site, some wetlands that were identified. One of them located in the middle of the site where the gazebo and walking path are that somehow didn't get carried over from the previous use variance plans. That was based on a preliminary investigation performed by an environmental consultant for the applicant. There's also an existing isolated wetlands feature along the eastern property line. Majority of that is on the adjacent property that had a valid LOI that established that whole area as an isolated feature with a 50-foot buffer. Applications and delineation of those wetland features and applications to the DMP are being prepared right now by the applicant. The areas of those two wetlands features are less than an acre, and they both, because they're both isolated, they both can be filled. And we don't anticipate any issues from the DMP regarding that information. I have some information on the buildings. If anybody wants to, the architecture of the buildings, if anybody has any questions, I can answer those for them. They were submitted in the package and shows the breakdown of the units, floor by floor, how many, how big the buildings are, the heights, what the building's going to look like.
Sean, why don't we pull up that exhibit now, the architectural rendering exhibit?
Okay. So that, I believe that was what so the one that was, I guess, was part of the submission package, 04 A1 elevations.
We're gonna mark that.
Right, these are the floor plans. These are, I guess, the 07 and 08 sheet D3 and D2.
There we go.
That's the one.
They were part of the submission, right?
Yes, they were. Correct.
Okay, no need to mark them then. That's fine. Just describe them. Okay.
So this is just a color rendering of the look of the building that's anticipated to be put on the site. Typical residential style type of building, variations in the facade, 2 entrances located along the front of the building. Each unit would have a balcony area outside, breaking up the roof lines, mixing the colors and the materials to provide some different variations in the building to break it up and not make it a monochrome, I guess, a less exciting building than it could be. As I said, the total height of the building is just under 32 feet, 31 feet 7 inches per these plan, which complies with the ordinance requirements. And it's only 2 stories. As you can see, there are windows on the left and right side of the elevations. There is a requirement for spacing from window to window between buildings of 3 times the height, roughly 105 feet if you go by the 35-foot height requirement. We are proposing 30 feet between the 2 buildings, so we need a waiver for that, or variance for that. Previously, we had proposed a 53-foot spacing between the 2 buildings. And I'll get more into that during the planning testimony of why the change, the reduction down to 30 feet. If you want to look at the floor plans, the D2 and D3, they have the first and second floor plans. Nothing special about them. In terms of unit sizes for the building, the studios that are proposed are about 524 square feet. The 1-bedroom units, both with and without a study, range from about 748 to just over 1,000 square feet, and the 2-bedroom units from 10 to about 1054 up to about 1,210 square feet. So they're decent sized rooms, decent sized units for the development. We feel that they are appropriate for the anticipated tenants to give them enough room in there that they don't feel that they're in a box type of unit. And also blends with the facility and the development as well. There's also there's another exhibit, I guess 802, the clubhouse architectural plans. You want to bring those up as well. You can take a look at those. And the architecture for that will be very similar to the roof lines of the residential buildings, trying to keep it in a very residential scale. That is a one-story building. When it comes up, it'll show gables on each side of the main entrance into the building. I'll have a stonework at the bottom of the base of the building that wraps around with additional.
Hey, Sean, hold on for a second. Can we pull up that exhibit? It's the we're looking for the clubhouse rendering.
It was 02 on the site, on the submitted plans,
right.
on the town's website.
Just bear with me for 2 minutes.
Okay.
Hey, Sean, while she's working on that, let's just, oh, never mind. Go ahead.
All right. As I was saying, very similar look as to the residential buildings in the roof lines and roof treatments. There's a cultured stone water table around the perimeter of the building from the ground up, just under 3 feet with a cap around there. Then vinyl siding is proposed right now for the horizontal vinyl siding for the rest of the building around the outside. So nothing fancy about it. Just a nice. It's expected that the materials here will match and blend well with the materials of the apartment buildings that are proposed, as you saw on the rendering. And that's all I have for the engineering testimony.
So, Sean, before we jump into why don't we do this? Let's just clarify one thing. We did get a engineering review letter from Mr. Dargy dated July 31st, 2020. Sean, I think you talked about some of the comments in that letter during your testimony, but essentially what we're saying is we can comply with each and every one of the recommendations in that letter, and there were a few of them.
Yes.
And we'll incorporate those, between the time of preliminary approval and final approval. So, all those recommendations would have to be incorporated into our final site plan when we come back to the board for that, correct?
Correct. So, yeah. So what I provided testimony for, I believe, is some information that Mr. Dargy was looking for, and anything else remaining in that letter is standard items that we can certainly comply with and revise as needed and provide that information prior to a final application.
And I think the same thing goes for the August 3rd, 2020 planning letter. Obviously, you'll have to provide some planning testimony in a second, but same goes for that in terms of our compliance with those recommendations.
Correct.
Okay.
And I would have the same comments related to Mr. Lavallo's letter as well regarding the landscape. We would propose to meet with Mr. Lavallo on the site to look at the heritage trees that he's identified, locate them, as well as locate the other trees within the wooded areas on site that are being disturbed as part of the tree removal and tree replacement plan requirements of the town. And in addition, the comments from the fire marshal and the fire subcode official, we have no objection to complying with those comments as well.
So basically what we're saying is all of those letters, which the fire subcode letter was dated 7/24/20. Fire marshal letter was dated 8/2/20. It was an email. And then there was a shade tree commission letter dated 7/28/20. So all of those, in addition to the engineering and the planning letters, we would have to incorporate any recommendations of those letters in our final site plan for when, if this application is approved and we resubmit to the board for final, we'd have to make those changes that are requested. So we would agree with that. Mr. Chairman, I defer to you. I don't have any more for Mr. Delaney. I think you heard a lot. I wonder if maybe we want to go through questions as to engineering before Mr. Delaney goes through his planning testimony.
Perfect idea. I think it'll break it nicely and it'll give him a chance to catch up a little bit. Mr. Dargy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think I've stayed quiet that long in quite some time. So Mr. Delaney did cover a lot of the items that we had requested that he provide testimony on in our review letter. Our review letter is dated July 31st, 2020. I do have a couple of quick things I do want to discuss, and I'm sure we might have some stuff in later on in the presentation as well. Mr. Delaney, did you say earlier on that the RSIS doesn't apply?
Yes, we looked at that. We looked at your comment, looked at what we were proposing, and what we were proposing are not, public roadways or roadways. In essence, they're acting as, really site driveways to a development.
I appreciate what you're saying, but the RSIS, specifically applies to whether they're private or public roadways. It applies to anything that's a residential development, but be it single family, multifamily. The only exception that the RSIS makes, and I was just looking through it. That's one of the benefits of being here in front of my computer, unfortunately or fortunately. And the only exception that it makes is actually for residential driveways for serving no more than 4 homes, whether they're individual or shared, serving no more than 4 homes. So unless there's some legal precedent or some citation that you have, I would advise the board that the residential site improvement standards do apply.
Can I just ask Rakesh or Sean, what would be the waiver that we'd be seeking if we just stipulate the RSIS applies here?
I mean, there's some geometric issues with some of the driveways. I mean, I think since we are one of the things I guess is the benefit here is that since you're seeking preliminary only at this time, I think we would say that you're going to try to comply with RSIs to the maximum, to the extent that you can, and then we're going to work out, or hopefully we can work out between Sean and I, the changes to the and Deanna, the changes to the geometry, and then if there is for some reason something that you can't comply with, we'll take a look, and if it's reasonable and plausible that it can be waived, we'll discuss that at final. Does that seem reasonable to you?
I think that's fine. Yes, we agree.
Can I just jump in for a second on that one?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can waive RSIS requirements. That requires a request to the Department of Community Affairs to seek a de minimis waiver. So there are no waivers to the RSIS that we can grant.
That's the only way you would be able to do it. Would be
Right,
if the applicant can't meet it, there would be a de minimis waiver, which actually the township would have to actually submit, because it's a
to the DCA
waiver.
right,
We'd have to submit, and that would be something that Mr. Piero and I would have to work out with your help, if we come to that. But
okay. Just wanted to throw my 2 cents in.
No, that's why I appreciate it.
Okay.
So again, moving along then to the wetlands issue, I got a little bit confused. Are those other wetlands pockets that don't show up on your plans that were on the variance plan? Are they or are they not present?
They were left somehow. The layer of the line work got left off of the submission of the plans. So yes, we will represent those as they're still based on the preliminary investigations that were done as part of the bifurcated application that was approved. They were shown on the plans. They're still there. We are in the process. The applicant is in the process of delineating those officially, locating them for an application to the DEP.
Okay, and that was going to be my next question. As far as your application to DEP, it hasn't been submitted yet?
It has not yet. No, it's in the process of being prepared. The field work's the line work's being delineated.
Okay, great. And then one of the other things that I thought had made its way into our letter, but it appears it did not. But you know, what's nothing like a surprise at the meeting. The stormwater management design. One of the things that we had discussed at the variance application was maybe trying to rather than doing one drainage basin and one BMP, doing multiple. And you have the second BMP. But I'm wondering, in that area where the clubhouse is, where that wetland pocket you were talking about, and you have it being disturbed already anyway, that gives you an opportunity to maybe do a tiered basin kind of arrangement where you could do a detention basin and then have it sort of cascade to the infiltration basin that you have proposed. And I think that might be a little bit less expensive to construct and easier to maintain. Is that something that you guys might be able to take a look at when you come back for final?
Certainly. I know we had looked at, trying to put multiple smaller ones and do that exactly what you're talking about. When we graded out the upper site, the grades were such in a way that we were looking at it, we thought we had a harder time trying to get the water up top down into a smaller basin in those areas without disturbing more of that open space and taking away from the potential usable space for the residents that would live there as a passive recreation area.
Right.
So we felt, by putting the one behind, capturing some of the runoff on the top by the buildings, and then putting the other one down below, it was a better use of that space up on top than doing it because of the grade change. We can look at it again and see if we can put something small in there to try and handle some of those areas. And
only if it's possible. That my concern about the detention pipes, you have the underground basin that you have, it's 500 feet of 42-inch pipe, 4 runs of 42-inch pipe, sort of stuck between the buildings and the retaining wall, and accessibility for the future becomes a concern if there's any issues with the pipe and they need to get replaced. As close as it is to the building and close as it is to the retaining wall, it would be kind of difficult. I'm sure there would be a construction technique available, but it would be difficult to remove or replace those pipes in the future. If not,
well, remember that area was originally supposed to be a fire lane back there. So we do have the access on each side with the fire lane to get to it. So it's cleared in those areas. So I understand what you're saying. We'll see if we can find some other areas and maybe do something smaller up in those open space, which still preserves some of that open space areas for use on site while providing another benefit up there.
All right. It froze up a little bit. I don't know. I'm thinking it was me that froze up because you guys all froze up at the same time for me. All right. And then I'm not going to go through every single one of the comments. I think the applicant said that they're willing to comply with all of our comments, and Mr. Delaney did provide the testimony we requested. So that's all I have for now, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Mr. Georgie. I think it's a good idea that what you hinted at of putting another enclosure for sanitation on the southern end, because if I lived in that southern building, I wouldn't want to have to walk all the way up to the other end. So I hope that happens some way. Ms. Swan, are you in on this?
Yes, I am.
Go right ahead. You want to wait until they do the planning, or you got anything else?
Exactly. I would wait to so that he can finish the planning testimony.
Okay, that's great. Mr. Garrity, you have anything for the engineer, fire marshal?
No, I'm good right now.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Mr. Laval, are you here this evening? I see your name up.
Gary?
Yes. It took a while for me to get on because I'm kind of confined to an area here.
You have anything for the engineer at this point, Gary?
Yeah, I heard the comments on the letters, and I'm okay with those comments.
I can't hear.
I can't hear.
All right, can you hear me?
Go ahead, Gary.
I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you, Gary.
Okay, I'm good with the comments that the attorney, Mr. Green, had said about complying and meeting on site, and that would be great to do. I just want to have it done before they do final engineering, so that if there's any adjustments that got to be made, they can be made.
Yeah, of course, we would agree to that.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Rump, you got anything?
Yeah, I just have a few items. Mr. Delaney, do you happen to, just curious, has an application been submitted to Middlesex County?
It has not yet, no.
Okay, that's fine. And I know you said that you were looking at providing a wooden guide rail. Just more for your information. I have not yet found a wooden guide rail that meets the new match standards. So it may be just something you may want to research on your own.
I saw your comment on that. So yes, we will definitely look
Yeah,
into
that's fine.
and provide
And
a compliant guide rail.
yeah, I know I know you talked about the sidewalk can't really follow the drainage basin, which because of the grading. Just between preliminary and final, maybe take a look at maybe instead of having what I'm going to call the little jog up near, I guess it's the upper left side, maybe just having the sidewalk go straight out. That parallels the parking area. But that's, again, that's a minor thing. And the only other thing that I have is, and we'll need this for whether or not we need a design waiver, is the backup maneuvering area, and whether or not that was 10 feet or whatever that dimension is.
Okay, so the dimension right now on the plan is 8 feet.
Okay.
We can make it 10, but we do have that striped area just on the back side, on the opposite side of the curb line, which is there to allow the emergency vehicles proper turning so they don't impact any of the parking. So realistically, we don't need the backups, even the backup space there right now, except for the fire trucks coming in, because we can back straight back into that striped space and go forward. We can eliminate the waiver and make it 10 feet. That's not a problem if the board feels.
It's your pleasure, whichever way you want to go. It's really just to clarify the record. And that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. I think I got all the professionals. Mr. Sachs, anything? Because I'm going to go to the board.
No, I have nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. Board members, as to the planning testimony, I'm sorry, excuse me, the engineering testimony. Anybody have any questions? Mr. Scogno? No. Ms. Kilduff?
Nope.
Okay, Mr. Connor? No. Mr. Dewhurst?
No.
Mr. Stoner?
No.
And Mr. Psychowski?
No questions.
Okay, I have nothing as well. Back to you, Mr. Gilman.
We do public comment at the end, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's do we got to do the planning. Yeah, let's do planning.
Got it. Okay. So Sean, let's go through the variances that we're asking for, the bulk variances. Obviously I mentioned, and Sean mentioned before, that we did receive D1, D4, and D5 variance approval at the initial application, the initial resolution, but we do have a few bulk variances, and Sean's going to provide justification for those right now.
Correct.
John?
And just to point out, there's been no change to those 3 variants before. We're still at the same level, so those variances are still good. We do have a couple of C variances for the site. As I mentioned, the building separation from window to window 3 times the building height. We had specified in the application at 35 feet max, would be 105 feet required. We are proposing 30 feet. The use variance plans that we had presented showed a 53-foot distance between those buildings. When the applicant went back to look at the buildings and worked it out with his architect, in order to make the units the sizes they were, we felt were appropriate for this development and the tenants we were looking for, not make them so small. The buildings got a little bit bigger, but we added some additional jogs in and out of along the facades. So we've actually maintained the same floor area ratio, which was a surprise to me. I almost panicked before the last meeting, thinking we forgot to notice for it. But when I checked, the square footage is we're still within the FAR requirement that we had gotten approved for, but the buildings got a little bit bigger. Each building got bigger, so it pushed them a little bit closer together. 30 feet is a typical spacing. I know from my experience with building codes, anything less than 30 feet, you have to put different fire ratings and walls and stuff, and the construction gets a little more expensive. So I try to keep everything at minimum 30 feet. We can push it out if we needed to a little bit to get a little more space if it's so desired. But I feel 30 feet is sufficient for these 2-story buildings. If there are 3, maybe it'd be different. But a two-story 30-foot high building with 30-foot setback is typical to a lot of residential developments throughout the state of New Jersey.
Hey, Sean, let me just point out, the buildings didn't get bigger, they got wider. And
Correct.
the floor.
Correct. Yeah, they didn't get deeper, they got wider, correct.
Right. Just to accommodate the larger units. Thanks, sorry.
Correct. Parking setback to building was 17.5 feet. We have 15 feet proposed, which is the same dimension we had during the on the previous plan that was approved as part of the bifurcated application. It's 15 feet to the parking in the front, as well as to the fire lane and drive aisles to the north and south of the buildings. And as I mentioned earlier too, the buffer to the residential or undeveloped residentially zoned properties, 50 feet required. On the building ends were 40 feet. The retaining wall on the southern side of the site were 42 feet to that point. And then there's 15 feet to the retaining wall that's on the east, located behind the northern building in that location. Waivers they're requesting, it was noted in the in some of the reports regarding the parking stall size, 10 by 20 is required by the town ordinance. RSIS permits residential 9 by 18. We are proposing 9 by 18 stalls on the site. I do not believe a waiver is required for that because we comply with RSIS for that. But if it is deemed necessary, then we would ask for that waiver. As I mentioned, also the spacing of the light poles, 72 feet or approximately four times the height of the poles that are proposed. As I mentioned, we're 100 to 125 feet, depending upon the spacing. We can shift those a little bit, make them a little closer. We feel the lighting levels provide the appropriate light levels on this throughout the site for safety. We will add one more pole, as I mentioned, on the southern end of the site to bring those levels up to the next or to one of the other lighting values that Ms. Levant had identified in her letter, and Mr. Dargy as well, being 1/3 the average on the site, the minimum 0.37. We have some lower areas that are below that at the southern end of the parking lot, so we will raise those areas up and do the analysis a little differently to within the parking areas, as Mr. Dargy suggested in his letter, to get a real accurate number for those. So we don't believe we need a waiver. We will comply with that, so we're not asking for the waiver for that stipulation. And then there are the two areas regarding landscaping, a landscape island every 10 feet. Every 10 spaces, I should say. We do have islands spaced throughout the parking areas to break them up. They're in some cases, obviously more than 10 spaces, 14 max spacing. Those islands are really placed for pedestrian access across the parking lot. If we needed to, we probably could eliminate a space, one of those walkways here, maybe one in the middle or so. We could add that more landscaping in those areas. If we added some additional islands in there, we might have to extend some parking a little bit to meet that requirement. So I believe we would request that waiver at this time. We do have landscaping along the sidewalks overlooking all of those parking areas to provide shading of those stalls. And then the landscaping requirement within the parking area, 20% of the gross parking area. We have not provided that calculation. So right now, I guess we can't determine whether we need a waiver or not. So maybe we leave that off for this application. If we provide the calculation and feel we need the waiver, we can request it at the time of final application. Because obviously it would be unfair to ask the board to grant a waiver on something that we haven't provided any information on. So with regards to the variances, I think they are justified under the C2 criteria and be granted without detriment. As I mentioned, the variance related to the distance between the residential building and the parking area are adequate for this type of development and pose no safety risk. It hasn't changed for the bifurcated application. In addition, the distance between the buildings is reduced to 30 feet for that. And the results of these modifications that were made, we believe provides a better layout and sizes for the proposed units within the buildings on the site, as well as the distance is sufficient, more than sufficient for a 2-story building. And then the variances for the buffer width are essentially unchanged from the prior bifurcated variance application. In fact, we've actually improved upon them. We removed the fire lane at the rear of the building, provide a full landscaped area back there, lawn area with some landscaping. The adjacent lot to the south is a commercial, or sorry, to the east is a commercial use along 34, undeveloped. So the buffer really has no impact to that property right now in its current configuration. It is a fully wooded site. We do have proposed retaining walls within those buffers, and they'll provide a barrier from the adjacent properties to the south as well. Our site is slightly above it, but we'll be planting on top of that. So there'll be the existing vegetation plus the proposed vegetation on top of the wall, which will provide a nice screen to those adjacent properties. To the east, sorry, to the north, I should say, the finished floor building is approximately 5 to 10 feet below the top of the wall. So the existing vegetation and supplemental landscaping will provide additional screening for the buildings, with the building looking like a one-story building from the adjacent property. With regards to the waivers, parking stall size, as I mentioned, I don't believe it's a waiver as we comply with RSI standards. The backup area, we can comply with that and eliminate that waiver request. We would request the light pole spacing waiver. We will adjust the spacing as needed to provide the light levels we believe that we provided are adequate. But, I think that most of them are around a foot to half a foot to a foot candle on average, 1.1 average throughout the site, which is more than adequate for a residential development. I don't want to light this up like a commercial site. We would request the waiver for the landscape island for every 10 stalls. We do provide those breakups. We can provide the landscaping along the western ends, provide some more shading on those islands at the end of the rows. We're going to look at adding possibly more columnar type trees along the frontage of the buildings as well. Provide some additional trees in those areas, as mostly the landscaping in front of the buildings is low-level shrubs along the foundations. And like I said, we would withhold the landscape, the 20% gross parking area landscape requirements until we provide that information to the board, and we would request a waiver at that point. I believe that the following purpose of the municipal land use law will be advanced by the granting of these variances. Purpose A, promoting the public health, safety, welfare, and morals. Purpose C, providing adequate light, air, and open space. And purpose I, to promote a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and good civic design and arrangement. I do not believe there's any substantial detriment to the granting of these variances and waivers. The setbacks are appropriate for the size of the residential buildings. The buffers will be enhanced with additional plantings, berms, and fences, as well as the retaining walls. And they have been increased in areas from the original bifurcated application that was approved. Don't believe that the proposed variances will not substantially impair the intent and purpose of the master plan or zone ordinance either. And therefore, it is my professional opinion that the benefits of granting the variances will substantially outweigh any detriments. And that's all I have.
Okay, and I have nothing further on planning.
We'll do the same thing, Mr. Goodman?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Warren?
Oh, thank you. I think most of my comments have been addressed. I just have a couple of questions. Page 7 of my report, item 6, affordable housing. I didn't hear anyone testify on that, and I just want to reiterate that the project involves 58 age-restricted units, of which 4 units in Building A and 5 units in Building B will be affordable to low and moderate income households. I do note that there was no mention of the very low income households, and I had a comment that based on the Housing Act amended in 2008, 13% of those units have to be very low income, and I hope the applicant agrees to that.
We agree. Sorry, I think Sean mentioned that early on in his testimony that we would comply with the affordable housing requirements, and we certainly will. And the requirements that you list in your letter, for sure.
Thank you. With landscaping, I think a detailed testimony was provided. Lighting, I had a comment that the proposed lighting is the box type Cobra head, and I recommend that some decorative or more aesthetically pleasing lighting that is compatible with residential developments be proposed or be added. So do you agree with that?
We'll work with the applicant to see if we can find a different fixture that appears more residential in nature. We can do
Thank
that.
you. Thank you. And there was a comment that I think you testified that there will be additional lighting added along the sidewalk or the walking path that goes to the gazebo.
Correct. Yes.
I think that's all on my end. I heard that you have eliminated the waiver for the backup areas. The section 250-74C2K related to 20% of the gross parking area has to be landscape will be addressed at the final hearing. I believe you eliminated the waiver for 250-75G related to lighting values. I think that's pretty much it, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Thank you. That's all from my side.
Ms. Sawant, your opinion on whether a waiver is necessary for the proposed 9x18 stalls versus 10x20?
I think I'm okay unless Rakesh has something else to say, but this is a residential development. Typically, if it was a commercial development, a grocery store, I would have said that they should provide 10x20s. But in this case, I think a 9x18 should be okay.
I agree.
Thank you, Mr. Sawant. Mr. Dargy?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any planning related questions, but there's one item that I meant to discuss when we asked Mr. Delaney about the engineering stuff. So if that's okay, I'd like to ask.
By all means.
All right. At the use variance hearing, there were some concerns by residents that came out about stormwater drainage off of this property, because obviously the site flows from Route 34 in a southerly fashion. Did the applicant get a chance, or the applicant's professionals get a chance to evaluate that frontage and see if there was any existing drainage issues that may be corrected by this application?
I think if my memory serves me correctly, the issues that some of the residents across the street had raised were some flooding in their basements, and potentially ponding in the I guess maybe in their road against their houses.
I thought there were some issues in the roadway that they discussed too, but maybe I'm misremembering.
Yeah, so obviously we have a wooded site right now where all the water, hits the ground, goes into the ground, becomes groundwater essentially, and travels due to the elevation changes in that southerly direction toward those properties. The soil borings that we had performed were dug down to greater than 10 feet below grade, and they did not find groundwater in the areas where our basin is proposed, indicating the groundwater table, at least at the time when they investigated, it was not high near the surface that would potentially come across the road, would impact their basements at those points, which what we thought originally there might have been a high groundwater table, or some soils in the area that when it hits the surface next to their homes was just sitting and piling up, or either groundwater coming from our site off into their heading in that direction, migrating in a natural way that would be leaning coming in contact with their basement walls in those locations and resulting in the problems they were experiencing. With the proposed development, obviously with the removal of the trees, we were taking some of that groundwater, the water that was going into the ground, and we were piping a lot of it and storing it back further and releasing it through a pipe system that goes through their yards, as opposed to allowing it to flow overland through their yards. I have not done any extensive investigations, for the outfall where those through their properties. And if Mr. Doherty, you and I can talk about that more, if it's something you want to see a little more, we can certainly investigate a little further into that. But with the reductions that we were required to meet and the groundwater that we're essentially reducing on the site into the site, we don't believe the impacts to their basements would be as big from a groundwater perspective that is currently occurs from the site right now. And we're expecting that the water that we're discharging off site through the pipes would bypass through their properties to the backyards, to the outfalls, and then reduce some of that, the impacts that they're experiencing at this time.
Okay. So I hear all that and I appreciate that. I expect that sometime between, should the board act favorably this evening or on this preliminary application, sometime between preliminary and final, we'll have an opportunity to discuss your design and some of the evaluations that you're doing. So we can provide the board with a little bit comfort on that issue at final. Does that sound good?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Dorsey.
Thank you.
Mr. Drum?
Nothing for the planning.
Thank you. Fire Marshal Garrity?
No, sir, I'm still good.
Okay, and Mr. Lavallo, you don't have anything for that you haven't already said, right?
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Sachs?
I'm good.
You good?
Yep.
All right, let me go to the board on the planning testimony. Mr. Scogno?
Nothing at this time, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Kilduff?
Nothing.
Mr. Connor?
Nothing.
Mr. Dewhurst?
Nothing.
Mr. Stoner?
Nothing.
And Mr. Psychowski?
No questions.
Okay, nothing from myself either, Mr. Goen.
Okay, well, that's really all we're planning on presenting tonight. So we're finished.
Okay, well, in that case, I'm going to open it up to the public at this time. That's okay with you?
Sure.
Okay, public at home, please look at the phone number that'll be put up. This is matter 6-2020Z, located at 3 Old Mill and 90 Spring Hill Road, called Fountains at Old Bridge LLC. If you want to comment on this matter, you have a question or you have a statement, please call the phone number now. Ms. Sawant, do we have anyone waiting at the moment?
None at this time.
Okay, we're going to wait a minute or two. Once again, if you want to comment on this matter, the Fountains at Old Bridge LLC, a housing development going on Old Mill and Spring Hill. 2 buildings of 29 units, a clubhouse and a pool. This is age restricted. If you have a question, please call.
I see no hands.
Mr. Sachs, let me know what you think on time for the public, please.
Jim, I don't see anybody with any hands raised either, so I think we could probably close the public portion.
Okay, I just wanted to give it a fair
Yeah.
shot.
Yep.
Okay, no one else is called, correct, Mr. Sawant?
No raised hands.
All right, public portion is closed for this evening. Mr. Goen, final comments.
Sure, very briefly. So obviously we've got, the board heard the application. I think you heard a lot of testimony. We have some work to do to comply with some of your professional comments in between the time preliminary is granted, hopefully it is, and final. And we look forward to doing that, working with the board and its professionals and seeing you back here for a final approval.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Sachs, this is only for preliminary site plan, correct? Along with, we're going to only do the bulk.
Variance.
What's that?
Bulk variances.
Yeah, but but one of the bulks he's leaving out, right? 2 of them, I think. The parking at 10 by 20 and the parking landscaping, we're not going to deal with, correct?
I think the parking 10 by 20 is a design waiver.
That's a waiver, yes.
Yeah, that's a waiver, yeah.
Okay, but he mentioned 4 waivers and 3.
Both of those were waivers, Mr. Chairman, sorry. But both of those things you're talking about are design waivers, not variances.
Okay, my mistake. But were there not 3 C variances?
Correct,
Yes.
there are 3.
Yes, there were.
Okay, 3 Cs, and they're going to be 2 design waivers?
Yes, correct.
All right, board members, absent any questions, I would ask someone we have to move the
Let's do the preliminary first. Yep.
preliminary first, followed by the Cs? Okay.
Yeah.
Someone want to move the preliminary site plan?
I'll move it.
Mr. Stoner, is there a second?
Kilduff, second.
Bill Duff seconds. Roll call, please, Ms. Silverman.
Mr. Dewhurst?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Ms. Kilduff?
Yes.
Mrs. Scogno?
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes.
Okay.
As to the previously mentioned Cs,
Yep.
want to move?
I'll move it.
Mr. Stoner moves. Is there a second?
Connor, second.
Moved in second. Roll call, please, Ms. Silverman.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Kildorf,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. And the 2 waivers, correct? Am I right?
Yes.
All right, someone want to move 2 waivers?
I'll move it.
I'll move it.
All right, I heard
Second,
Dewhurst, and who's the
Who
second?
moved?
Mr. Dewhurst moved it.
Who seconded?
Who second?
I'll second.
Stoner, I think. Stoner seconded.
Either one. Roll call, please, Mr. Silverman.
Mr. Dewhurst,
Yes.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Ms. Kildorf,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Mr. Psychowski,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Mr. Goen, thank you very much for you and your professionals for the presentation this evening.
Thank you. But we should do it like this more often. This is.
Yeah, right.
Thank
Well,
you so
Mr.
I'm as
Gargi-
surprised you are, buddy.
Have a good night.
Have a happy holiday, everyone.
Happy holiday weekend, okay? Thank you very
I'm
much.
glad Mr. Pressler finally gave me some time to speak.
Yes, you used up part of his time, yeah.
Bye.
Good night, Mr. Goen.
Good night.
Ms. Silverman, anything to bring before the board?
Our next meeting is September 17th. Waiting to get the passcodes and everything. I was trying to get a C variance on. I'll know more tomorrow what's going on. Other than that, the meeting after that will be October 1st.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if that one's going to be a Zoom or not at this point.
Okay. That's not up to us, so we'll figure something out. Mr. Sachs, anything to bring before the board before we?
No, we're good.
And
Larry, you gotta tell your news.
Oh, yeah, well, my
I thought
daughter
you'd bring
gave,
something before the
no,
board.
I have good news. My daughter gave birth to a son on Monday. And
Oh, congratulations.
Congratulations, Larry.
First grandchild.
Congratulations.
So we're real excited.
Yay.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay.
So that's my,
Right?
Township end?
pardon me?
I was asking Ms. Sawant if there was anything that she wanted to bring in from the township end.
No, I have nothing.
Okay. Well, good news for you, Larry. Hope it improves your golf game.
I doubt it.
It won't help his bank account.
Well, listen, hey, that's going to then have a negative effect on his golf game.
Right.
All right, board members, I want to wish everyone a healthy, happy holiday weekend. Please be safe. We'll meet again on the
Okay.
17th. Someone want to move for an adjournment, please?
Motion.
Is
Motion.
there anyone not in favor? All right, all in favor,
Aye.
signify by saying
Bruce
aye.
isn't here, so.
Okay. All signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Take care, everybody. Be safe.
Night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey.